Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out here today. My name is Colleen McEntee, and I'm the Public Affairs Coordinator for St. Charles County Government. I'm first going to run through the press conference program here before turning it over first to County Executive Steve Ellman. He's going to go first, and then Prosecuting Attorney Tim Lomar, Juvenile Officer Ken Simmons, City of St. Charles School District Superintendent Jeff Marion, City of St. Charles Mayor Sally Faith, and then County Executive Ellman will come back up to lead the question session.
Thank you, Colleen, and thanks to all of you for being here. It's a very significant day, I think, addressing what could, if not handled now, could become a very serious problem someday. And I like to think it's a good example of city, county, school district, and everybody involved working together. Let me just give you a little background on how I became interested in this. I don't know if you remember, but the Post-Dispatch, I think it was last fall, had a front page story on Sunday about the Missouri School Improvement Program, and it had the MSIP scores, and it had all the school districts listed and had their scores, and of course all the school districts in St. Charles County had good scores. But I noticed that the city of St. Charles was below the rest of the school districts in St. Charles County, and as a alumnus and taxpayer in that district, I the next day called Dr. Marion, the superintendent, and was just curious what that was all about. And what I found out was almost the entire difference was due to poor attendance. Wasn't the fault of the taxpayers for not providing enough money, or the fault of the teachers for not teaching, or the administrators for not administering. Kids just weren't there. And because they weren't there, we didn't get the 10 points that the other schools in the county got. And, the problem, of course, was truancy's always been a problem for the truant. But now it's become a problem for the entire district because it reflects on the school, reflects on the district. And I started asking, Dr. Marion, well, is there anything we can do? And we started looking into various things. Found out that the St. Louis City had a truancy court, has had for about 7 years. Mayor Faith and I went down there one morning, sat through the entire docket, and it was very interesting. There were people who came up who had very good excuses why Johnny was not at school, and there were people came up didn't have very good excuses. And the judge dealt appropriately with each case and tried to help the people who were willing to work at it, and always, of course, had the option of punishing them if they did not. I think one of the reasons that Sally and I are interested in this is because city government, county government, under our Constitution, we really can't do much to affect the school. They're on their own. They're very independent. We certainly have always wanted to help. But the one thing that we can do is we can enforce the law. And Tim Lomar is going to tell you a little bit about the law, and we've had truancy laws in effect for some time. Not only is the child expected to be there, but the parent is responsible for making sure that they are. And I guess I'll close with just, again, citing the fact that, there's been a great debate going on probably for the last 20 or 30 years about education, public education. And let me make it clear, this initiative is for public school students. It's not for parochial school students. It's not for homeschooled children. But in this debate, there are some people, of course, who think that we need more money for the schools. There's others who think we need tougher standards for teachers, better discipline. There's a whole array of explanations about why we have certain problems, why certain schools fail. But no matter where you are and what you think should be done, I think everybody should agree that we can't do anything if the kids aren't there. It doesn't matter how much money is spent. It doesn't matter how qualified the teachers are. It doesn't matter how beautiful the school building is. If the kids aren't there, they're not going to learn. And under the DESE guidelines, the school district's still going to be held responsible for the grades that they make on their math test. So I think we need to do everything to send a message to the families, the parents, that we're here to help, and we'll hear a lot about things we'd like to do to help them. I've got our health director working with the school nurses to see that in the event children really are sick a lot, if there isn't something our health department can do, flu shots, vaccinations. So we're going to do everything we can to solve the problem, but we're going to help everybody who wants to be helped. But eventually, we're going to have another card to play here, and that's in the courts. We got together after Sally and I went down there. We had a meeting at City Hall. Councilman Terry Hollander, who's a member of the county council, a former teacher, was there. Prosecuting attorney Tim Lomar was there. Ken was there. We had, you were there too, Jeff, weren't you? We were all there. And we talked about the various things, and as soon as the meeting was over, Tim came up and said, I'd really like to get involved in this issue. So Sally and I basically let him take the ball and run with it. And I'll ask him to go ahead and tell you what he has in mind. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I grew up here in St. Charles City and graduated from St. Charles West High School. In fact, Councilman Terry Hollander was one of my coaches, football and basketball, and my teacher of history. What else did you teach me, Coach? Civics, thank you. I have a tough time calling him anything but coach. But it's particularly appropriate today because when he would talk to us about the specifics of whatever it was, basketball or football, the drills we were working on, the plays that we were supposed to try to implement, he was always really big on driving home bigger life lessons. And that's really why we have our kids play youth sports, is to not only create those opportunities for competition, but also to allow for these life lessons. And I remember Coach saying on several occasions, the keys to success are really simple. Show up on time, and when somebody asks you to do something, do the best you can. And it's really those first two that we're focusing on here with this effort. That really is at the heart of it. And as Steve said, the issue is not one that we should take lightly, nor do we take it lightly. We recognize that our community, the future of our community, as cliche as that sounds, if we don't have kids who are educated, if we don't have kids who are successful and graduate from our schools, eventually that's going to have its detrimental effects on the community. So not only from a community standpoint, but obviously from an individual standpoint for the kids and the families involved, we thought it's a good idea to really just make a concerted effort. Speaking of that effort, I see Chief McKinley, St. Charles City Police Department, is in the crowd. This is a collaborative effort with his department. His department has school resource officers in each of the schools, elementary, middle, and high schools in the district, and they will be working very closely with Ken Simmons' deputy juvenile officers. And I'd like to just take a few minutes to just describe the process to you, what we're talking about here when we say a truancy court. Basically what we have is a state law that's been on the books for many years, which makes it a crime to not send your children to school regularly. That applies to parents and guardians. So over the last several years, the way we as a community collectively have dealt with attendance issues has typically been strictly through the juvenile court. In other words, we focus more on the child who's not attending. And there were occasions where the parent was brought into that as well, but for the most part it was a focus on the child through the juvenile court process. And that certainly had some successes. But as we sat back and reflected on some of the things we talked about at our kickoff meeting, so to speak, we realized, we've got criminal laws in place that we can work with through our office as the prosecuting attorney. We've got the deputy juvenile officers who are already doing a lot of these things. And we've got the school resource officers who are on the ground who can help us pull this together. Why not collaborate and come up with a very organized, concerted effort to try to get to the bottom of these attendance issues? And that's really why we've done what we've done. So basically what we have here is a situation in which the deputy juvenile officers, in collaboration with the school resource officers, will constantly be monitoring children who have problem attendance. Unexcused absences specifically is what we're talking about. At that point, then the deputy juvenile officer will become involved and sort of do an assessment, which is more of an in-depth analysis as to what might be the root cause of this student's attendance problems. If it's determined that the attendance problems are primarily student focused, in other words, it's the student, him or herself, who's the major cause, then we've got a plan in place through the juvenile office, through Ken's office, that student will be marshaled through that process in an effort to try to get them to a point where they recognize and appreciate the importance of school attendance. On the other hand, if the assessment shows that it's more of a parent problem, this is what's new. They'll come through my office. We will use the state law that's been in place for many years. We will file misdemeanor charges against a parent who we believe fails to ensure that their children attend school regularly. Now, it's important to point out that at that point in the process, it's still not anything but a diversionary process, meaning we are simply trying to address the issues, provide services, and enlist cooperation of the parent. And if we do all those things, and that results in the child successfully attending school, then we will dismiss the charges. That's what we mean by a diversionary process. So it's important to point out that this is not a punitive situation. It could result in that, of course. That's obviously the threat we have with the state law, so to speak, but our goal is not to punish parents, but it's instead to give them an avenue to sort of address under a very controlled circumstance what may be causing their children to have irregular school attendance. So with that, I believe I'll turn it over to Ken, and we'll have questions in just a few moments. Ken Simmons.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you everyone for coming today. I'm sure you'd all agree a child's poor attendance has, again, very much a negative impact on all of society, just like you've heard earlier. Traditionally, like Tim described a little bit, the deputy juvenile officer would work solely with that child, and that would come after a referral came in from the school or from the school resource officer. The referral would come to the court. That referral would be assigned to a deputy juvenile officer, and that deputy juvenile officer then would work with that child, possibly file a petition, take the child to court, or otherwise work on an informal basis with that child. Well, we all know, too, that poor attendance oftentimes is just kind of a tip of the iceberg. There are other issues going on at home that's preventing that child from going to school on a regular basis. Oftentimes it's the child. Child is, for whatever reason, doesn't want to get out of bed and go to school. Oftentimes it's the parent. Parent, for whatever reason, doesn't make the child get up and go to school. And oftentimes it's also a combination of both of those things. So again, the historic perspective is the deputy juvenile officer would work solely with the child. With this program, this is an opportunity for the deputy juvenile officer to go in and assess the whole family and also try to provide services to both the child and the parents or the legal custodian. Again, as Tim mentioned, this is a diversionary type program. Our intent is solely to improve the child's attendance. If that child is not attending school because there's homeless issues, the family's transient, things like that, then that deputy juvenile officer can help kind of navigate some of the systems and some of the laws and hook that family up with services so that that child can go to a regular school like they're supposed to. If there's substance abuse issues, or there work-related issues, or transportation issues, things like that, again, this is an opportunity for deputy juvenile officer to go in, assess, and then try to use community-based resources, services, to resolve whatever issues are having a negative impact on the attendance. So that's our goal with this. In addition, you also find that many of the families that we work with have all kinds of issues that go above and beyond the poor attendance. And again, this is a way for us to work with the police department, with the SROs, with the school officials, with the social workers, with some state agencies. Children's Division oftentimes will have a family-centered services worker involved with some of these cases. This is an opportunity for us to work with all those folks and try to resolve the problem. So I think that's it, what I was supposed to cover. So with that, I'll introduce Dr. Marion. school superintendent.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it. I think, the folks here they've summed it up pretty well. I think the message that we're all collectively trying to get out is that student attendance matters. And anything that we can do to help parents and students understand that, of course, if you're sick, we don't want you to come to school. But we have too many people that feel like, well, it's just not that important if we need to pull them out for this, or if they don't feel like going. And that's ultimately having a big negative impact on that student's learning. That's having an impact, as you've heard, on this accreditation of the school district, which of course can affect the property values and reputation of the whole community. So I want to thank County Executive Steve Ellman and Ken Simmons and Sally Faith and all the people here that have worked together, because I think this is the spirit of cooperation as public servants that we need to utilize in order to send the message and set expectations for our community. I appreciate that, and I want to thank you. And Tim Lomar is very helpful, and Terry Hollander, thanks for being here. Because I think the more we can pool our resources and our brains to help people understand there are consequences, short-term and long-term, for lack of student attendance. And, the buck's got to stop somewhere. So we're hoping that this program will help us get the attention of the students and parents so that we can help them be successful. This is another example we have with us here. I'll just recognize them, and they'll be here afterwards if folks want to interview them. But we have Dr. Ed Gettemeyer, principal of Hardin Middle School here, 3 of his finest students sitting here. And they've started working with this spirit of cooperation. You can maybe say they started, because they've started a teen court outside of this process over the last couple of years, where we've allowed juveniles with lesser offenses in the school to go through a teen court heard by peers in the school and do community service and those kind of things rather than get a juvenile record. The courts worked with us with that, and that's really, we've seen great things with that. We're hoping that this cooperation and collaboration with the city and county will also lead to that same kind of success. So I think that's a great example of the things that we can and should be doing. So I wanted to make sure we pointed that out and thank those folks for that. With that, I think the probably best thing to do now is, because you can just say attendance is important so many times, right? I think you get the gist of the program, but I'll turn it over to County Executive Ellman, and we'll see what questions you might have. But thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marion. Principal Ed Gettemeyer was telling us earlier that he's been very interested in this issue to the extent that he's actually knocked on doors in the morning and to get kids out of bed to get them to school. That's the kind of effort I think it's going to take in some cases, but we just need to help develop that culture that this is important. And 90% is kind of that's Desi's goal. 90% of the kids there 90% of the time. But 90% attendance you're not going to keep a job very long when you get out of school if you only have 90% attendance. So with that, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, thank you, and I want to thank everybody for this process too. I would like to add that Ken Simmons and I have worked on beginning this process for the past year, and something very interesting. We put processes and procedures in place whereby we work with our DJO, and we have those diversionary meetings this year for the first time, and we followed a specific process where we're trying to get systems of care in place for our students and for our families. And our numbers just came out at the end of April, and for the first time since I've been principal at Hardin Middle School, we've exceeded that 90% mark. So we know that if we put systems in place that this can work. And so we're very excited to partner with the community, to partner with the juvenile justice system, and really find ways to help parents, understand the importance, and if necessary, help them get their kids to school. So thank you for that. We appreciate it, and thank you to my students from our teen court and from our peer ambassadors, because really they've driven a lot of really cool things at Hardin Middle School.
Well, thank you. One other person I want to hear from here is Sally Faith, who served in county government, city government, state government, but you've never been on a school board, right? So you had to get involved somehow.
Thank you. I'm in trouble. I skipped from there. That's all right. That's all right. The main thing is, I think the key word that I've heard is opportunity. opportunity. This is an opportunity. It's an attention getter. It's why we've asked everyone to be here. This is why we're recording it. We're going to certainly show it on the cable channels. But opportunity, I'm stealing your word, to make things happen and to make a difference. As was previously said, you cannot, education is lifelong. I said that, he didn't say that. Education is lifelong, and as old as I am, I'm still learning. So I'm pleased with that, but I do show up to work. So I think I must have learned that in school. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. That includes our press conference. If there's any further questions afterward, we'll be around for just a little bit. So thank you so much.